Welcome to this edition of the B2B Engagement Podcast. Today's topic is why AI has forced B2B storytelling to evolve. And everyone listening to this podcast, I'm sure, has experienced this and is also curious about how this is evolving today and where we're going in the future. We're very fortunate today to have as our guest an expert in this topic, Scott Shadley, who's the Director of Leadership Narrative and Evangelist at Solidigm. Scott, welcome.
Hi, Gavin. Great to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you. And I think this is obviously a topic that's very important to a lot of marketers today, particularly B2B marketers involved in all aspects of technology. Perhaps we could start by just introducing you to our audience and overview your background briefly. You started, I believe, as an engineer, and it'd be very interesting to hear how you evolved your career into marketing leadership.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So I'm into my 30th year of doing this fun line of work. I have a double E degree in device physics, so I actually help design the underlying media that sits in all of the standard SSD products today. I was going through the process of getting the education complete. I decided it was time to go for that master's, and when I started querying all of my coworkers and friends, they're like, "You talk way too much to be an engineer, so you should go into marketing." So I have an MBA. It's actually been quite entertaining because I'll walk into a meeting with a bunch of engineering teams and I'll hand them a business card that says Scott Shadley Marketing. And they're like, "Oh, it's one of those guys. Let's ask him some questions and I can answer them." So it actually helps make the engagements more entertaining.
Do you ever find that your engineering background helps you in understanding the marketing process and maybe transcending what is often taught in pure business school for marketers?
Engineers are very black and white in a lot of ways. There's a lot of gray that the concept of marketing can introduce into that. Like when we produce content or collateral, I can see from my consumer's point of view in ways that other people can't, which is kind of interesting.
Well, I think it's really important to have that sense of empathy, not just emotionally, but also technically understand what their daily lives are and how your discussions, proposals, solutions are going to actually impact them personally as well as their products and companies. Right?
Yeah, the path to follow is unique for the different types of people you engage, and knowing it from one end to the other helps a lot when it comes to developing the right level of engagement material.
That leads us into the topic of today, which is related to the fact that not every decision is made purely on the basis of technical feeds and speeds. Even when you're selling in an engineering organization or selling to engineers, having an understanding of broader issues other than each specific technical feature is a really key ingredient in being able to be successful in building these relationships.
People still have a fine line between marketing, sales, and engineering. And you tend to have engineers talk to engineers and sales guys talk to procurement people in most cases. And then marketing's kind of somewhere in the middle of all that. And when you're able to understand that that's just not the way it works now, and that if I end up talking at an event with a specific engineer, I still at some point have to engage the procurement team or someone else in that organization to help facilitate the funnel. And so being able to understand the mindset and how to talk the different talks with people, especially as this market is starting to evolve so quickly. We need some ability for people to actually want to read through that content or engage with that collateral.
It's very interesting you mentioned that this is a bit of a pendulum swing where the generative AI tools then so easy to use and so effective that people may be over relying on them instead of creating some combination or hybrid of tools that were built and tools that
Yeah.
you customize and then create a real engagement that makes sense for that particular individual.
My problem is I watch content, like if someone creates video content with AI, to find where AI messed up, not because I'm interested in the content. I'm looking for the problem. And so these AI tools are great, but there's still an aspect of making sure you look beyond what they can help you do and still produce value added. I want to engage with something type of content.
And don't you find that people are not just using it for content generation, but they're starting to replace search?
Yeah, I think it's very true. I've had the luxury of presenting at a number of different events and conferences, and this idea that AI is intelligent is only as smart as we've taught it. And if you think about it from a net age perspective, it's still an infant. I can train it and I can tell a model something. It'll remember it and it'll recant it as truth, even though it's not a fact, it's false.
I think that's an important point because if we're marketers in this new world, we really have to understand a little bit about how these LLMs work. But it's not clear to me that the buyers the people who are involved in the ecosystem that we're selling into and that we're trying to educate think that way. And then they're using that information that's coming back to them from the Gen AI tools as if it were validated and
Yeah.
accurate. And then that really affects what we do as marketers, because if we know this is happening, it has to change what we do in order to educate the market and reach certain people, right?
Yeah. I've actually had telling someone that what they learned was not accurate, type of thing. A good example is I have board member in my LinkedIn title because I sit on the board of a standards body. And one of the AI tools told one of my coworkers that I was on the board of directors of our parent company. So, there's only so much we can do. But if people are going to learn and listen from that perspective, we have to have a way of telling them, hey, I'm using AI for a reason, but I'm not using it as, the gospel of marketing.
And the sort of irony of the whole situation here, as you're talking about this, is you're in the business of creating AI infrastructure, right?
Exactly.
Holding you responsible. I'm just saying you're part of this world, right?
Yeah. One of the beautiful things is the amount of data that we're generating is never going to slow down at this point. We are just on this exponential curve of data generation, and with all these agents and tools reiterating and reiterating, we're creating more data than we know what to do with. And I happen to make products that store that data really well. I know we're having problems. Let's work it together. Here's some examples of ways we can optimize, focus on things like efficiency, sustainability, reuse, redeployment. And we do that through engagement tools.
You've always been very active in customer engagement as a marketing philosophy rather than just spray and pray, right? The whole idea behind your philosophy around marketing is to meet customers in their environments, understand their problems, and then find a fit. What I'm really interested in is sort of what led you to these new tools, of course, but also how the AI environment today has amplified or accelerated the need for those tools, because there's more and more of what we've just been talking about in terms of where people are getting the information from. And what I think it's creating is an environment where marketers such as yourself need to find ways to engage with customers in a completely different way so that they're not just taking information, assuming it's true, and then moving on
Yeah.
with that maybe false impression.
Yeah, it's interesting because to that point, we're all using AI to do research for us. So a PDF of speeds and feeds is now going into an AI tool. It's not being read by an individual. And I don't think it will moving forward, to be quite honest. We still need those. They exist for a reason, but they're not an enablement tool. From an enablement perspective, we all interact. And so, no matter what I can do from an engagement model perspective, letting someone be able to touch and feel a technology even through some form of an interactive access is much more valuable than just sending them here, read a white paper, or here, do that. Because at this point in time, we realize that the average attention span in 2026 is expected to be under 26 seconds. If you don't got something to say within 26 seconds, people tend to go away. And we can prove that with data.
Well, it's interesting because you have your own products and solutions as a test case for this environment, because I think a lot of people commoditize certain product categories, right? So they think of servers as servers, they think of storage as storage. It becomes a real challenge for marketers and evangelists such as yourself to then be able to not just articulate, but communicate and help the buying community understand those value differentiation aspects of different solutions. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about maybe using Solidigm as a good example, what some of the key value differentiators are and why it's so hard to convey those using just pure LLM results or a traditional website.
I work in a storage industry, but 95% of the people hear storage, they think, to your point, a server or a storage server or something that contains storage, not all the way down to the SSD level. And so we're a box in a box sold to someone else inside of another box, right? And so being able to show people how that cog fits and the differentiation, to your point, of what the technology I make, I would rather spend more time showcasing the value of my technology than trying to explain what I am. And that's what we can do with some of these new marketing tools. We have these boxes that we throw up in a trade show, or we take into a customer and say, hey, look, you can hold it. It looks like a deck of cards. Okay. Now what? Back in the day, I had a deck of content 175 slides deep. Now, I never went through 175 slides with the customer. I learned how to surf around within the document to give them what they want. And it needs to be more real than that now. It has to be a tool that I can literally, as a user, not as the presenter, can go in and go wherever I want to interact with that product. These needs come from our consumers because holding a little box is interesting, but that doesn't help. They start asking all kinds of unique questions that don't go down the path of how do I help win your business?
Exactly. And that's really what we're trying to do, is to help them understand in what circumstance they should choose us, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
And I think that's the point that you were making earlier, is that it's not enough to just have the declarative information out there. You've got to find a way to have them connected. And you said something about that 178 slide PowerPoint deck. One of the big differences is the customer is actually the one doing the driving now.
Yes.
So they are the ones who are going to find on their own the points of interest in the sequence that matters to them and for the duration that matters to them, right? And this has become even more amplified because of the Gen AI tools, because the LLMs get trained, but the users are being trained to have these sort of conversational
Yeah.
interactions as opposed to just a one phrase query, right?
Yeah. I mean, to date myself, right? We're literally everything in the realm of human history seems to repeat itself. I used to buy these books as a kid, choose your own adventure. Get to the bottom of a page. If you choose option A, go to page 62. If you choose option B, go to page 85. And you jump back and forth inside that book as a choose your own adventure. We are now in the digital version of that. Our customers, our partners, whoever they are, they know what they think they want to go down the path of. And I can't just walk them down that path. They have to find it on their own. But the tools need to be there.
Well, that's right. And I think your task now as a marketer in this age is to ensure that your footprint is going to be everywhere your customers do that searching on their own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't talk about my company's products. I'm talking about solutions that are available because of the technology, but I never mentioned a product name, a speed and feed, any of that kind of stuff. Here's how you can use it if you do this kind of thing, right? So it is definitely an engagement model where you have to show why it's important that they consider something about it, not necessarily what it is that your specific drive does to enable or solve a customer's problem is more valuable than saying, here's a product I have. Do you want some?
This is where B2B marketers could benefit from a technical background. And this is where understanding the customer's problem is so important, because you talked about the racks and racks of data center servers and storage devices and compute and network devices. All of those, because of the volume of data, suddenly it might be much more important to have, let's say, for example, and I'm not saying this is the case, but just as a reference point, it might be much more important to have redundancy than the fastest throughput, as an example, right? Just because there might just be an overload of data and the consequences of something not working might be far more severe. And so understanding the problem and then being able to help the customer by even potentially educating them about what the impact of their problem is or their situation becomes more important than saying, I have the fastest or I have the lowest power or whatever the solution is. Yeah.
It's very interesting because we take power is a simple metric that we can all think about. We're talking gigawatts now, right? We're hearing business deals done between AMD and others or NVIDIA and others in gigawatts. They're not talking about dollars and cents or billions or whatever the billions may be anymore. They're literally talking gigawatts. And so a technology like mine, we care about total power reduction for our product in a system to allow it to be used for other things. And that's a whole different mindset. And AI tools are actually kind of great for some of that, right? But there's also other tools that we need to show people how to build those up, right? So there's calculators involved, and those calculators exist in different ways and shape. But the concept of TCO is out the window. We don't care anymore. It's not about total dollars spent. It's about every other metric out there that makes things more effective and how to showcase those with the different marketing tools that we have available.
I think this is where the concept of value storytelling, and you've pioneered this and done so much, so effectively in use case storytelling, as opposed to, as you said, my company, my product, but it's use cases, how it's actually being used and in what circumstances. And the reason I think this is so important is because the different members of that ecosystem, the buying ecosystem, care about different things. And so while somebody does definitely care about throughput and read write, I'm sure, there is a larger ecosystem or perhaps another decision-making group that cares a lot about water consumption or about power consumption. And so the relative value of all of those things combined then creates a total value story rather than a total cost of ownership story, right? Very different marketing environment. Mm.
Yeah. Not everybody gets the luxury of being first to try something new or look at something different. There's a lot of fast following involved, and being a fast follower is not a bad thing. If you're a big, huge cloud customer, you've got the billions to throw at anything and everything. But if you're a traditional enterprise that's trying to just make something new happen, you're going to use those use cases of someone else who's tried something and then maybe doing a little tweak or innovation. I mean, worst case, you copy, you're still adding value to your system. And that's really kind of why we spend so much time telling people, here's how we did it with this person. And we can help you do that too.
And I think the best way to do that, and that's one of the reasons why I think you've been so effective, is to start by understanding that customer and then finding some other reference point that is just like that customer in terms of the problem. And then the first thing that happens in the mind and the heart of the customer is they say, oh, I can relate to that. Basically, that's an emotional connection. Therefore, the story that you're telling means something to me, and it's obviously got some resonance with the situation that I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to highlight that we know enough about the infrastructure, the ecosystem, and the whole stack, if you will, is valuable because then the customer can trust that, we see it from their point of view. Even if I may not be, a data center architect, I get some of the challenges because I spend the time to understand where they've been or where other people have been. My goal in life as a marketer is to have me as a trusted advisor.
That's one of the lessons here is that when we think about our role as marketers, let's help first. And then let's see if there's an alignment with the solutions and the products. And maybe you can share some of your experience with this, but the dynamics have changed in terms of the power of the sales and marketing teams used to be the source of information for customers, right? Now they're doing a lot of this digital discovery on their own.
I see marketers as educators, right? That's really what it comes down to is education, support, training, and then eventually you end up with the bill paid at some point in time.
Well, I think that happens when the trust is built and then there's an alignment around the value that they're going to receive. And I think that it aligns very well with what you just said about being a teacher. A good marketing communicator is somebody who is teaching. And the best way to teach, as you know, is to have people experience things for themselves. Watching a 90-minute video is not a very effective way of teaching, right? Getting people engaged and involved, that's the way to get them to learn, right?
Yeah, I've been in a number of customer conversations where they start asking very technical details. And I'll actually stop them. And I'm like, if you want to go down that path, you can. We have a limited time together. What are you trying to solve?
Yeah.
Because you may think that what you're talking about is the exact right solution for what you're thinking about, but I'll probably be honest, it might not. The actual solution you're looking for, let's come to a conclusion together and find you the right product. You don't focus on a price, don't focus on a function, focus on a solution, and that this and that don't have to necessarily be mine. They might, but let's find the right product.
Do you think that there's an understanding of that priority in marketing on the part of other corporate executives, senior executives in other roles? In other words, marketing has changed from, telling the story to understanding the market, understanding the customers, and communicating these value stories and messages. Do you think that's well understood in sort of the C-suite or the senior executive roles in general?
I think they're learning as much as we spend time with customers, educating them and talking to them and helping them with solutions. We're doing the same thing inside the company. If we're not, we are doing a disservice to our executive team. I could talk to a dozen customers in a week. They may talk to one or two at an executive level, which is a very different conversation, but they need to know what everybody else is talking about. So that really turns it into marketing has to make sure the execs they work for understand the nuance of the differences and things like that. So every once in a while, I'm like, guys, it's not that way. And they're like, but this is how it's been. And it's, well, let's talk about that.
Other area that strikes me that has had to change is the sales role. these commercial teams, they also have to, I think, adjust their approach, their behavior, their methodologies. Have you seen that in the industry as well?
I have, and in a tight market that we're sitting in, like we are now in 26, a salesperson's role is not about let's go have a beer or go play on the golf course. It's like you've got real problems to solve. Let's help you do that. And salespeople have been leveraging their marketing teams a lot more lately for that very reason because of the nuance that we see the bigger picture.
They value your industry knowledge, they value your judgment, and they trust you, right? And I think that's with all of the elements of what you said earlier about putting in that authentic education is that results in that trust.
You could almost say that a lot of the B2B-ish marketing and sales is changing to almost a B2C simply because they are so well educated on what's going on by way of AI. And so being able to talk to them from that concept is you know, we know that you work for a company, but your individual role is being now enabled by a lot of AI research, AI support, all that kind of stuff. And the right decisions comes down to the influence around you. That's what we're doing now in the B2B market more than ever because we have all these ways of learning so much more. And we're now acting more like consumers with friends than we are necessarily businesses with businesses. And I'll be honest, I spend more time with engineers and sales guys than I do other marketing people a lot of the time because they're my peer group that are helping me. And if I don't have the answer to a question, I can say, I'll get back to you and I know exactly who to go ask. And sometimes they're not inside my company. Being able to do those kinds of things is paramount to the success. Because if you have 9 people squeaking at you about the same thing, but calling it different, it doesn't solve a problem. If you have 9 people talking about the same market selling different versions of that technology, that adds value.
Well, we could talk about this all day. The last sort of topic that we can learn from you is this is a very fast moving market and lots of technological developments happening at rapid pace as you build this customer engagement strategy. How do you keep that resilient and relevant, independent of the snapshot in time that you're at?
I would say don't be afraid to try new things. Fail fast so you can learn faster. Um, a lot of people have been putting a lot of buzz out there that AI tools are replacing jobs. If you think of it that way, you're going to treat it that way. AI tools are here to enhance your ability to do your job more effectively if you use them the right way. Are they going to alter the way some of our roles react and work in this environment? Absolutely. But are they going to take, quote unquote, take that job away? That's if you let it. Be willing to drive new ideas quickly and realize that any assumptions you had from even a year ago about a funnel or a process or a flow don't exist anymore. And don't try to fit into the old mold. Find the new way, find the new path.
Well, I'm going to try to do that, Scott. Thank you. It's been great to talk to you and really appreciate both the time and the insights and your authenticity.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure and I look forward to future conversations.